Welcome to the Old Men of the Three with JJ Redick and Tommy Alter, brought to you by 342 Productions. This is episode 212, mailbag episode. We haven't done a mailbag in a while. Lots of great questions. We want to thank you, everybody, for sending in questions. Real quick before we get to the mailbag, though, an eventful week on First Take. A couple things I just want to say first. Number one, I've rewatched particularly the clip from Tuesday. Don't regret what I said. It's truthful to me. I do regret the delivery. I think sometimes when you get in certain environments, you can get emotional, and I regret that. Number two, the thing I said yesterday about, Kevin Durant, it's not his job to educate fans. Do fans want to be educated? That wasn't a complaint. It wasn't a complaint, Tommy. I've said this a million times. Like, the NBA is entertainment.
Yeah.
The ecosystems around the NBA are entertainment. And really there's primarily two ecosystems when it comes to everything outside of a game broadcast. There's the entertainment side. Who is the GOAT? The stuff we do on First Take. There's a bunch of fans that like that. There's a reason that Stephen A's show has been so successful, has been the number one show on ESPN for over a decade. Fans love it, and I get it. And I've said this, 90 times to this point. It's a privilege and an honor to be on that show. No issue with that. Then there's another ecosystem where I think fans do want to be educated. And I brought up the Point Zion episode. It wasn't me pitching the thing. It was just using an example. There's so many people in NBA media that do a fantastic job of trying to explain the game and trying to educate the game. It's the reason that we wanted Nekias Duncan and Steve Jones to work with us at 342.
We highlight this.
Yeah. This Caitlin Cooper, Ben Taylor from Thinking Basketball. Like, if you're a Miami Heat fan and you're not following Brady Hawk and his play breakdowns, you need to be following Brady Hawk. Across the board.
This is the beauty of the internet, is you get the barrier to entry now is so much easier to get through. It's like, if your stuff is good, people are going to find you.
Yeah. And I think sometimes when things get clipped out, like, I know the Doc thing came across as personal. Of course it was personal because I played for him for 4 years. It's not like it got clipped out. It didn't show the sound bites from earlier, which hadn't been addressed, and I wanted to address them. That's all. In the case of yesterday, the clip with "it's not the player's job to educate," that was in response to something that Stephen A said. I will say this in regards to that. I don't think it is the player's job to educate fans. It's our job. It's something I take responsibility for. It's something I take very seriously, and there's a number of people that want to do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. Last thing I wanted to say, which I've been talking to one of my friends about this. Last thing I want to say that I always have found interesting in the 2.5 years that I've worked in media, and this is not unique to me. I'm not by any means acting like a victim here. I choose to do this. I enjoy doing this. This is not me saying, "Oh, I'm a victim," because people come after me.
You are very precise in what you choose to do on an hourly basis. You would not spend the amount of time it takes to go down to the seaport to tape if you didn't want. You're not a hostage.
Yeah. So, but what I find interesting across the board in the discourse around things that are said through any media channel is that when someone says something that incites a reaction, very rarely do people actually address the substance of what was said. Oftentimes, they attack the individual or question the motivation or agenda behind what was said. And if you noticed on Tuesday, no one ever actually addressed the substance of what I said. They came after me.
Yep.
Again, not unique to me. I just find it very interesting.
Yep.
It's like, there's been other times at this, and it's like, well, you never won a championship. Well, no shit, dude. I fucking lived it. I know. I've talked about this. Like, I know my shortcomings. I know my failures as a player.
Yeah.
Like Pat Bev the other day, it's like, dude, if you want to say I sucked at shooting a basketball for games 5, 6, and 7 of the Houston Rockets series, by all means, could not consistently make a shot for 3 straight games. I didn't get torched by Harden that series.
No,
so come with facts.
You pointed this out. You pointed this out. I mean, I don't think we're not
going to belabor this on the podcast. I just wanted to point out, I do find it interesting that this happens to people all the time. Whether it's a take or a comment or sometimes something very insightful, and people get all riled up about it. They don't have actually ever address the substance of what was said. They question the motivation or they attack the individual. It's an interesting phenomenon.
And I think it's important, and you said this was the first thing you said, which you stand by your comments. It's like, as long as you are happy with what you said, which you are, everything else is noise. I mean, this is what social media is it's quote tweets and it's blasting and it's takes. And at the end of the day, it's also like, and we talk about this in the office, it's like, there are no games.
Yeah.
The games start tonight. When the game starts, it's like, let's get back to basketball.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. All right, let's get to the mailbag. On that note, about Doc Rivers, we had 2 interesting questions. Thomas Parker, Giannis for 3 is his Twitter handle. How could the Bucks have prevented the coaching fiasco that they seem to have themselves in? How do they fix their season, not just coaching, but team-wise? And if you are in the front office's shoes, how are you viewing this situation right now? And then Cam at Cameron1 Cox, COX, what makes a coach great? As it relates to the Bucks, I think there's a number of things that I want to talk about when it comes to coaching in the NBA, Tommy, because it is a very unique thing. I think a lot of coaching in the NBA has to do with timing. And so you look at the run that Bud had, a lot of success in the regular season, 1 championship. He's a championship coach. And certainly from the outside, looking at how people observed him as a playoff coach, whether or not he made adjustments or whatever, like that coaching run has a life cycle with a core group of guys. So they bring in a rookie coach, which is fine. Like if that's the choice they make, they brought in a rookie coach. Clearly it wasn't working out. So then they bring in what I've said twice now, and I'll say it for the 3rd time, the best option in the middle of the season with getting a championship level coach,
a guy that
Doc
has a
Rivers.
Ring. A guy that has a ring, a guy that's been there every year.
And again, and this leads me into what makes a coach great. There's so much that goes beyond just X's and O's, being able to run a practice, having a game plan on a whiteboard, watching film, holding a film session. Like that's all part of being an NBA coach for sure. And I don't know that it's even half. It's so much more because you have to have that.
Yeah.
It's like inherent to the job. It's the other stuff that I think, to answer Cam's question about what makes a coach great, it's the other stuff that makes a coach great.
Well, my question for you, and the situations are very different, but take Kevin Ollie in Brooklyn right now versus what Doc had to come into. We've talked so much about the importance with coaching of managing the locker room on a personality standpoint. When you're an assistant who gets bumped up, the guys. Like you may change schemes, you may change, technical things you're going to do, change defenses, whatever it is, but the guys already. If you haven't obviously experienced this, but you've seen it around the league. If you're someone who's coming in and it's like, oh, you have to implement everything schematically, but you also Doc doesn't know these guys. You know what I mean? Like maybe he's coached against them. Maybe there are a few of them that he's coached before, but he doesn't know this interpersonal dynamic. So you're doing all of that on the fly. You would think there's going to be a learning curve, no matter who you are.
Oh, for sure,
for sure.
It's again, you look at. We brought this stat up, I believe. The last 2 coaches who took over mid-season with a winning percentage as high as Adrian Griffin, they went on to win a championship. Ty Lue in 2016. And I apologize, but I'm blanking on the guy's name with the Los Angeles Lakers. He got into a bike accident and had to miss the rest of the season. Lakers went on to win the championship. This was like 1980. And so that, again, goes back to timing or whatever. But I think to your point about managing people, I think and managing people in the middle of a season when you take over, I think the hardest part is getting immediate credibility, immediate respect, and immediate buy-in. That's really hard to do. Immediate trust, right? That's hard to do. And relationally, that takes time. And it's not just the managing of people that are on the basketball court. That's the other part of this that I think often gets overlooked when we talk about NBA head coaches. You are managing the performance staff, the training staff, the equipment people. You're managing the PR staff. You're obviously have to have a synergy and a relationship with the ownership, with the front office. Whether you take over midseason or not, all of those things go into it. The NBA season is rarely a linear progression towards greatness, right? It's a series of highs and lows. Managing that. I've said this all the time. Doc has a lot of great qualities as a coach. He was one of the best that I played for in terms of managing those highs and lows, never getting too high, never getting too low. You have to manage conflict.
Yeah.
You have to manage. I literally just talked to an NBA head coach about this, about his approach to managing conflict. Conflict in the NBA within a team is inevitable. It happens. You are 82 games, 6-7 months at least of a season together every day. You're in a highly competitive environment. Conflict is going to happen. You have to manage that. So what makes a coach great? It's all of these things.
Yeah.
It's literally all of these things.
Do you think that the conflict element has gotten worse? We talk all the time, and this isn't just a media thing, but the media thing, in this particular case is sort of what we're referring to. But like with this cycle of you come in and you need to win right away. And if you don't, and by the way, like I would even ask this, the Clippers faced this when they traded for Harden and they start 0-6. And everyone's being like, "This
0-5, yeah,
0-5. This is an all-time disaster. These guys are all washed. Now look where they are, And so does that managing of conflict and not having the too many highs and too many lows, is that something that has gotten sort of progressively worse because of the?
I don't think it's actually because of media necessarily. Although I'm sure there are owners that are very hands-on, that read every article about the team, right? I'm sure that exists. In terms of like the conflict stuff, which leads to these tweets and rumors and sources say type deal. I think that's always existed, and conflict is always that's not worse or better now versus in 2006 when I first came in. It's always existed. It's existed before that. We all watched The Last Dance. Like it's the NBA. It's like you've got 15 egos on the court. You've got another 5 egos on the bench. You've got another 3 or 4 egos in the front office. You've got an ego with the ownership. Like that. But by the way, as a coach, that's your job.
Your job is to manage all that.
You got to manage all that.
Yeah.
And it's a difficult task. I think we can all recognize that. In terms of basketball, what makes a great coach? To me, if I had to summarize it in one way, it's like, are you maximizing the group and are you maximizing each individual? It's very hard to maximize each individual. It is. It just is, because some guys inevitably are going to be left out of the rotation. Some guys, can't have a bigger role because of the guy that's better than them playing ahead of them. But are you maximizing the group? Is the group achieving at the highest level that group can achieve? Late game preparation. Like the best coaches I played for, we would practice late game scenarios. The best coaches I played for, we would practice ATOs, after timeout plays. We would practice set pieces. We would practice need threes. It's 1:10 to go. We're down 6. We need a 3. We would practice that stuff. So the preparation part of it is huge. I think the coach that was talking about conflict to me, he was talking about it's more art than science. And I think that's true. I think coaching in the NBA is more art than science.
Yeah.
Everybody that complains about their coach, every fan base that complains about their coach, always complains about the lack of in-game adjustments. And I would say that is an art too, and not a science.
So with how you're describing this, the best parallel to a coach would be like a CEO. If you fire your CEO because the company's not performing, you bring on a new CEO, and it's almost like the ownership is like the board of directors who decides. From an execution standpoint, I guess I'm curious about, and this is not even Doc in particular, but just any coach in our modern climate, when you're executing, blocking out that noise that we're talking about and being like, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to I understand that I need to hit these numbers by earnings to execute, or whatever it is. But at the same point, I can't worry about what my 2,000 employees think, because ultimately it's like it matters, but it doesn't matter enough to adjust the way that I have to operate.
Is insularity a word?
We're making it one.
I'm going to make it a word.
Yeah, if it's not, it should be.
Look, I fundamentally believe, despite the amount of access that we have now to players and teams, every team has a social media team, digital media team. I bet you, if not all, most of NBA teams have at least one player on that team that has their own podcast.
Yes, at least one, and a team podcast.
And a team podcast.
Separate of the individual podcast.
We've never had more access to teams. And I think the challenge in some ways is to still create an insular environment. And we would talk about this sometimes with teams where you're like, you can't worry about what your mom is saying. You can't worry about what your best friend is saying. You can't worry about sometimes what your agent is saying. Like, it has to be about the team. It has to be insular. It has to be a sense of like togetherness and like it's us versus the outside world. And again, it goes back to what a great coach does. He tries and succeeds in most cases in managing all of that
and locking them in. I have a Bucks specific question. There was a breakdown I was reading earlier today of their offensive, defensive, and net ratings facing the top 10 teams in the league, the middle 10 teams in the league, and the bottom 10 teams in the league. Top 10, they're 7th against top 10 teams. They're 7th in offense, 5th in D, 3rd in net. Middle 10, they're 3rd in offense, 23rd in D, 11th in net. And bottom 10, they're 13th in offense, 25th in D, 21st in net. From numbers like this, and just from your overall analysis of where they are right now, are they underachieving? It's like, are we going to look back in 3 months with who they have on this roster right now? If they go on a playoff run and they push Boston, maybe they beat Boston, maybe they get to the finals and be like, okay, yeah, this team had this talent the whole time. They just haven't been living up to the talent that they have on the current roster.
Well, it'd be interesting to see what those numbers are at the end of the season. There's a few different ways to measure strength of schedule. I think ESPN's metric, they have the hardest schedule remaining. I know I saw when I was doing some research the other day, one of the websites I found that's reputable had them as having the 3rd hardest schedule. So it'd be interesting to see that. Let me say this about the Bucks. Whether you want to call it underachieving, that doesn't matter to me. They're a team that is capable of winning a championship. They're a team that is capable of getting to the Eastern Conference Finals and beating a Boston or beating a Miami or beating the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're more than capable. They have 2 of the best players in the NBA. Brook Lopez is a star in his role. Chris Middleton is quietly having a great season, despite having a bunch of minutes restrictions to start the year. Malik Beasley's awesome. Shooting the shit out of the ball.
Awesome, yeah.
Some of the defensive stuff was like, we're going to want to create more turnovers. Okay, well, that led to more blow-bys. That led to guys being out of position. That led to, despite having Giannis and Brook, almost 0 rim protection. They were the worst teams at defending the rim because they were so spread out. And so, I think simplifying the defense, getting back to a base level defense, their defense now under Doc is trending in the right direction.
Yeah, for sure.
I have no doubt that this offense can hum at the right time. I have no doubt. And even with some of the offensive numbers under Doc going the wrong direction and creeping towards the bottom in that 10-game stretch since he's been coach, you look and it's like Damian Lillard hasn't shot the ball well. Like, he's a big part of their offense. And then he goes and wins a 3-point contest, goes with the MVP.
Maybe he'll woke him up.
I have no doubt Damian Lillard at some point is going to go on a stretch where oh shit, like that motherfucker's just cold.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not a concern of mine that they're going to score in the playoffs. They've been able to, at times, to score in the playoffs without having a Damian Lillard. They're going to be able to score in the playoffs. I think the bigger thing to me is like the positional matchups and how a Cleveland or a Knicks or a Boston, how Miami, how they sort of manipulate that. Because the reality is they just don't have that wing stopper, right? And maybe Jackson ends up playing important minutes in the playoffs, but I'm not like selling all my stock on the Milwaukee Bucks.
No one's trying to run into Giannis and Dame in May.
All right, y'all, let's talk sleep. We all know how important a good night's rest is, which is why I want to urge you to try a Helix mattress. This thing is no joke. Now that I'm calling more games, there's a lot of late night flights and red eyes, and falling into a Helix mattress is all I think about on the flight home. We've had a Helix for about a month, and Chelsea and I have both noticed a difference in our sleep quality. Now look, everybody is unique. That's why Helix has several different mattress models to choose from. each designed for specific sleep positions and feel preferences. The Helix mattress lineup offers 20 unique mattresses, including the award-winning Luxe Collection, the newly released Helix Elite Collection, a mattress designed for big and tall sleepers like me. Helix has models with memory foam layers to provide optimal pressure relief if you sleep on your side, and they also have models with a more responsive foam to cradle your body for essential support in stomach and back sleeping positions. Plus, they have enhanced cooling features to keep you from overheating at night. And your personalized mattress is shipped straight to your door free of charge. Don't want to take my word for it? Helix has been awarded the #1 mattress picked by GQ and Wired magazine. It is even recommended by multiple leading chiropractors and doctors of sleep medicine as a go-to solution for improving your sleep. Helix is offering 25% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners. Go to helixsleep.com/JJ and use code HelixPartner25. This is their best offer yet, and it won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts now. Oily skin is the worst, and most fixes just leave your face feeling dry, especially in these cold weather months. How do you put your best face forward during this winter season? I have the answer, friends. It's Lumen Skin and its charcoal face wash. Lumen is a line of brilliant men's skincare solutions crafted especially for men who want to look and feel their brightest. Whether you're a seasoned skincare pro or a total newbie, Lumen Skin has got you covered. Lumen's Charcoal Face Wash is a purifying wash designed for men of all skin types. It lathers to a creamy foam and gently removes excess oil and dirt in order to rebalance the skin. It's perfect for before bed or after a day in the gym. What makes Lumen's Charcoal Face Wash so special? Yep, it's the ingredients. It contains charcoal, which seamlessly absorbs dirt and impurities, helping to fight both breakouts and premature aging. It also contains Centella asiatica, which soothes sun damage and helps to revitalize the skin's protective barrier while locking in essential moisture. The best part, Lumen will let listeners of Old Man and the Three podcast try this product for free. Yes, you heard that right. You can try Lumen's Charcoal Face Wash for free. Head over to lumenskin.com/the3 and get your free trial of Lumen's Charcoal Face Wash and their other amazing products now. That's LUMIN skin.com, THE and the number 3. Say goodbye to irritated, oily skin and say hello to a new, refreshed you. Don't wait any longer. Your skin will thank you. All right. Like this one from Alex Golden, because we talked about this on First Take, and I wanted to get some of your thoughts as well. Alex Golden, NBA. What player from the USA has the best chance of becoming the face of the league, and why?
I thought your answer was really good on First Take. The wanting it is really important. The wanting it is really important. I think that is. I've talked about this with some of the guys around the league. Like, it's not enough. The production, like you mentioned, Kawhi. Kawhi's a perfect example of Kawhi's a transcendent Hall of Fame all-time talent that's playing in real time. He clearly doesn't want to be the face of the NBA. He doesn't want to talk. And so I think when you look at Tyrese, when you look at Ant, Tatum for sure. I would put Book in there for sure. I think you look at these guys. I think the other thing which you guys mentioned is the championships. And so we're going to see that over the next couple of years, how these playoff runs end up shaping up. If Boston whips off 2 championships in a row, I think that's gonna be, I think that's Tatum's to lose.
When we talk about face of the league, because we did it very early in October with RJ and Legs when I had them on the podcast in October, and we talked about this, and whether it happens in a year or 3 years or 5, it's going to happen. It's going to happen because Steph and LeBron and Kevin Durant are all on the other side of 35. It's going to happen. And the components to me, it has to start with winning. I think a guy like, going back to, let's say 2-3 years ago is like, well, Ja, Morant, and Zion, they had a chance. Not saying they can't get there.
Yeah.
If those guys at some point win, they're the type of personalities, game, athleticism, all that stuff. They could get there as well. Yep. Despite the Zion injuries and despite the Ja off the court stuff that he's been through in the last year, they could still get there, I think. The point I made on First Take was, let's not act like a number of these face of the leagues have been perfect off the court. It's
for sure.
People want greatness. People want greatness. That ultimately is what becomes the face of the league. People that win, people that produce in the biggest moments. And if you have a personality and a charisma and you want to embrace being the face of the league, like Tim Duncan didn't want to embrace being the face of the league.
Yep.
But he could have been.
Well, so this is not answering Alex's question, but I mean, if you were to say like who is the face of the league just straight up
now?
No. I'm saying for the next 10 years, my pick would be Wemby.
Yeah.
I think Wemby will be. I mean, just from a this is completely anecdotal, but seeing the reaction. I went to this event in Indy at All-Star, this Boys and Girls Club event, and all the different guys were there. I'm like seeing how the kids reacted, and this is a guy that's played for 5 months in the NBA. I think he's somebody that if he continues on this trajectory and they figure that team out and they win a little bit, I think he has all of the like star qualities that somebody like LeBron has, that somebody like Steph has. He has the off the court stuff. He just did this deal with Louis Vuitton, which is like a first of its kind type deal. Like he has we've talked to him. His personality is there to do something like this. Yeah. He clearly wants it on and off the court. And so I think I think that it's an interesting. I mean, we've talked a million times about like how the league is trending more international in general. But I guess my thing is I almost don't see the face of the league being American. I think just based on where we are. And so whether or not that's a thing that, people want to accept right now, it would be surprising to me if it was based off of what we know.
So I would ask this question to that comment, which is, does the face of the league have to be American? I would ask that question to Alex Golden too.
Yeah.
Because I think it's 30% of players in the NBA right now were born internationally. The game in the span of 30 years has grown exponentially on an international level, going back to 1992 in the Barcelona Olympics. And we've seen now 5 straight years an internationally born player has won. Giannis certainly has the personality, I think, if he won a couple more, to be the face of the league. And he seems to want that and carry that. Like, I think he could be the guy. I personally don't think the face of the league has to be American.
So I don't have it came out a couple months ago, so I don't have the numbers in front of me, but Omar Raja, we're both friends with, who does social media for ESPN, sort of highlights. He's really smart on this topic because he has all the metrics. So he sees basically what hits and what rates and everything like that socially. And for the last, 20 years, it's been LeBron. It's been LeBron and Steph. It's like for better or for worse, you put LeBron and Steph.
There's a reason all the shows have to talk about
LeBron and
the Lakers,
everything. It's gonna do crazy numbers. And so he had a breakdown he did a couple months ago where he was basically took those guys out of it and he was looking at some of the younger guys, and the guys that were performing the best were Wemby, Luka, Chet was doing really well, Shai was doing really well, Tyrese was doing really well. I think you can tell by the Tyrese content over the weekend that he's been doing better as well. And so based off of that, it does feel like the audience, and we know how international the NBA audience is, it feels like there would be an appetite for the face of the league not being American. It's almost like we all just have to accept it.
Yeah.
Like this is where it is.
All right, let's get to our next question. This is from Shamit Dua at Fear the Brown. If you're not following Shamit, please go follow him.
Great Pelicans
content.
Commentator.
Love his stuff. All right, his question is something I'm doing research on, but what are your thoughts on teams intentionally manipulating opponent help defense by putting small, weak defenders in low man situations? When mismatch hunting, does it make sense to target the best rim protector and leave the small in help? This is interesting. So I think if we're talking about bringing the best rim protector, so let's say it's Brook Lopez, or let's say it's Jared Allen, we're bringing him up into the pick and roll. I think in those situations, it's rarely going to be a switch, right? In the case of like a Brooklyn Nets with Nick Claxton, best rim protector, they're going to bring him up. It's going to be a switch. So I think team by team and case by case, it's a little different. I will say this from my own experience. Prior to everybody just trying to switch everything and really truly mismatch hunt, which is basically like, come here.
Yeah.
I found out one team calls it duck. So I'm like, come here, duck. You know what I mean? I was the duck.
Celtics.
One coach I had called it the poor sister. Like, come here. It's like, so yeah, you're the guy that we're going to pick on, and it's a horrible feeling. And you can show or you can, try to hedge or whatever, or you can switch. Prior to that, which was like the last really like 4 or 5 years of my career, the weakest defender was always the guy at the rim. You always put him as the help in a pick and roll.
Yeah.
You always did that. And so I think that's just part of like another toolbox or another tool in a coach's toolbox to manipulate the defense. Because some teams, they're so good about not getting in those mismatches. We made the comment with Paolo Banchero, Atlanta has done a really good job, and Trae Young has done a really good job when he is hunted in terms of showing, rerouting, getting back. They really pull over to prevent that quick pass. And there's a number of ways you can do this. We talked about this the other day with someone, like the Celtics, for instance, with Porzingis. So if teams are going to switch that, they're just going to punish that. And one of the ways they punish that is when he runs into a pick and roll, it's more of a slip than a ghost. A ghost is you run into a pick and roll and you slip out to the 3-point line. A slip is like you run into the pick and roll and then you just backpedal and you're behind the switching defender. And he just punishes that matchup. A lot of teams use that action when teams are switching. So yeah, if you're doing that, let's say you're doing that, you're switching across the board, you can do that, let's say with Porzingis, and put the weakest defenders over in the low man help side. What is he going to do against Porzingis if he's behind the defense? He's going to do nothing but foul or get dunked on.
Yeah.
So it is another tool in the toolbox for sure.
Do you think there's a real world where defensive 3 seconds could get?
Ooh, let's go.
Because I have it.
Ethan Lasser, any more defensive foul rule changes you'd like to see happen over the offseason, or do you think we're good as is? All right. He asked specifically about fouling. Brought this up a couple months ago. I want to get back to this. The offensive player dribbling the basketball, getting downhill, the defensive player sliding along, not by the rule book, in position, and the offensive player launching himself or initiating all the contact, throwing his head back, shooting up a bullshit floater. We need to get rid of that. It's not good for the game. Like Maxey did it against Booker in the All-Star game, bro. They went to timeout. And
I've seen it.
I was like,
I've
what?
seen it a lot.
Maxey's foul baiting in an All-Star game?
I've gone to too many Brooklyn Nets games this year. This is every third play it was happening.
I hate that call. And it used to be like 3 or 4 guys in the league would do it. And now every team has 3 or 4 guys that do it. Want to get rid of that. I think we should absolutely experiment, and let's say we do it G League or whatever. We need the FIBA rule where you can be in the key for 3 seconds. The reason that they put in defensive 3 seconds is because they needed space. We've got enough space. In fact, you could argue we've got too much space.
Too much space.
I mentioned this on First Take the other day. Over the last 10 years, NBA players have had to cover 15 to 20% more of the court from 10 years ago until today. You look back at the data, all the tracking cameras, they have to cover in 10 years, 15 to 20% more of the court. Now, think about this. If that's the case in 10 years, this is post-Phoenix Suns, post-Orlando Magic. This is the early stages of Steph Curry. This is right around the time that the pace and space play Bosh at the 5 with the Miami Heat. Could you imagine how much more of the court you have to cover from 2024 to, let's say, 1994?
It is a crazy number.
I mean, think about some of the iconic shots. Guys are like Steve Kerr against the Jazz is literally hitting a 16-footer. He's spotting up from 16 feet. John Paxson, when he went 8 for 8 in 1991 against the Lakers, all 8 of his jumpers were inside the arc at like 17 feet. So you're double to
like
close out
jumpers.
It's literally like the difference of like 6 feet.
If they were to do it, Oscar, now, if they were to get rid of that rule, who do you think the most dominant defensive players in the league would be right now? Because I have a couple of thoughts.
Gobert.
Wemby and Gobert, right?
Wemby and Gobert.
Would be 1 and 1A.
They'd be their own defense.
Yeah. So
they'd be their own defense.
Like it feels like those guys.
I think Wemby, even without the defensive 3 seconds, like eventually the best version of him is like, oh, the Spurs just run the Wemby defense.
Is there? I would have a hard time imagining the NBA would change the rule for this reason. Maybe they would, but is there a world where we talk all the time about this FIBA issue that we have and how, like, regardless, I mean, who knows what's going to happen this summer with everybody playing, but in general, like the issue the guys have going over there, if this rule was changed, is that something that like would help? You know, it would have helped this team in August.
Interesting. I think what would have helped the team more is just like being used to playing that way, where you're guarding 3, 4, 5 actions, where you're guarding 2 different misdirections that actually gets to the third thing. I was watching a video. Ryan Polone, I'll give him a shout out if you want to watch some good stuff too. I think he's with the Pelicans G League team, has some great video breakdowns on his Twitter. And he had a bunch of Spain pick and roll. Spain pick and roll is a high pick and roll where they bring a shooter as essentially the third person in a pick and roll. He can act like he's going to set a screen on the big. He can slip out. There's a number of options you can do out of this. And he had a bunch of actions from EuroLeague that were Spain pick and roll. There was like 4 on every clip. There was 3 or 4 actions that led to the Spain pick and roll. NBA teams, if we run Spain pick and roll, most of them, the big goes up to screen, the guard is in the lane, then he comes up to set the screen on the big, and then he slips out, or that's it.
Yeah.
This was like 3 or 4 misdirections. So I think it's that type of like play calling, play design that is different than what we run.
Yeah.
We run an action to get to a result or to get 2 on the ball.
Yeah.
They run 3 or 4 actions to get to the thing they actually want to get to. That's the difference to me.
That's interesting.
All right, we got a question about who will win 6th Man of the Year, which brings us to our DraftKings Sportsbook segment. Who will win 6th Man of the Year? All right, according to DraftKings Sportsbook, Malik Monk is the odds-on favorite to win. He's at -115. Tim Hardaway Jr. at +175. And Norman Powell at +750. No one else has better odds than I think +1,200. So those 3 guys leading the way. I do have one, I guess, dark horse candidate, if you will. Malik Monk having an outstanding season. His playmaking, he's leading.
Crazy.
He's like averaging a career high in points, obviously, but he's averaging a career high in assists. He's never averaged, I think, more than 4. He's averaging over 5 this year. Second year with that team. He's been awesome. Tim Hardaway Jr., 17 a game, 36% from 3. Norman Powell, a beacon, if you will, of efficiency in 25 minutes a game, 13 points a game, shooting 45% from 3. All those guys are still in the running. I certainly would put Monk as the leader right now. I don't know that Norman Powell gets there unless there's a stretch where someone gets hurt and he's playing more minutes, because the production is not matching. He's been awesome, but the overall production is not matching. Tim Hardaway Jr., with the restructuring of the Mavs, PJ Washington coming in, Daniel Gafford coming in. They've won 6 games in a row. He's got a chance. All right, I mentioned my one dark horse candidate, Tommy. Karis LeVert, +2,200 right now on DraftKings Sportsbook, having a really good season. And with the way the Cleveland Cavaliers have played over the last 20 games and risen in the standings, he's going to for sure be in the conversation, and deservedly so, at the end of the season.
I wanted to ask you about the Mavs just in general. The 6-game winning streak obviously added Gafford and PJ at the deadline. Only teammates averaging 25, 5 and 5 are Kyrie and Luka. What's their ceiling? I hate this question, but like, is this a team that like you've 2 transcendent talents in this backcourt? Is this a team that can win the finals?
As a general feeling on this year's NBA, I think the Western Conference has a more wide open feel than the Eastern Conference. Some really good teams in the Eastern Conference, but I could probably name 4 or 5. 4 or 5 that I think could win a championship this year. Maybe less. With the West, it feels like similar to last year, where I made the argument you could talk me into 7 teams winning the West. You could probably talk me into 7 or 8 teams winning the West. And Dallas is one of those teams, for sure. We know who Luka is. We know who Luka is in the playoffs. Kyrie has the experience. He's got the big-time clutch moments in the playoffs. This roster now feels like a roster that complements the 2 of them.
Yep.
So I don't want to put a ceiling on them, Tommy. I'll say I want to see more.
I think you answered the question without answering.
Yeah, but it's a very good team. And it's honestly, like we did the show with Nikias and Steve on Monday about teams to watch, and like we all agreed on our text chain on Sunday night, we were like, we all kind of want to talk about Dallas, but we also would rather talk about them more in depth once we've seen this group together for 5 to 10 games.
Let me ask about Gafford in particular, and I'm not comparing the two of them at all because they're completely different players in every way. But I remember when Boston made the White trade, there was a sense, and you said this at the time, but there was a sense with a lot of players around, players around the league knew how good he was, whether or not everyone else knew. It was kind of like this is a great fit. I would say with Gafford for the last year and a half, there's probably been 7 or 8 guys who've brought him up unprompted.
Really? Yeah.
Been like, this is the guy. I don't want to blow this, but I'm gonna say names or whatever. But it's people who are we want to trade for him, and I have no idea why it didn't happen. And so when that happened, it didn't get a lot of hype at the time. But clearly, it's clear. You watch them play that OKC game. Clearly, he knows what he's doing with Luka from the jump. And so, is there a world where you like that, and not to downplay Washington, but the Gafford edition in particular could be a thing that we look back on in 2 months and be like, okay, no one was saying on February 10th or 8th or whatever the day the deadline was that this was going to be the pickup of the offseason, but heading into the
trade
playoffs,
trade deadline,
of the trade deadline, but heading into the playoffs, it really was.
Yeah, it gives them obviously more depth at that position, which is something I think they needed. And in particular, because Lively's been really good for a rookie, you obviously don't know how he's going to play in the playoffs, right? So I think Gafford, just with that a little bit more experience, a little bit more of he knows what the fuck is going on. It'll be interesting. It's funny because Luka was joking about we had to teach Lively how to do the Gortat screen. I want to see more of that little pairing with Luka and Gafford and pick and roll. I think it's weird because he got traded from Washington. It's weird because Washington also traded Porzingis to Boston, which is unlocked their team in my estimation. It's why to me they're the favorites right now to win. He gives them something they haven't had in a number of ways, defensively, offensively, posting up the 2-man action on the weak side with Jaylen Brown getting to his right hand, him getting behind the defense. And by the way, when it happened, we were oh, Boston got better, right? But it's no, they got really better.
If Boston wins the championship, where does getting Porzingis and 2 first-round picks rank in terms of just who knows what everyone else was thinking in that trade? But it's crazy when you actually look back and see that deal for how good he is there.
Yeah. I think Brad Stevens has a chance to get Executive of the Year. I'll just say that. All right, this has been our DraftKings Sportsbook segment. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code JJ. New customers who deposit $5 or more can get a no-sweat bet up to $1,000 back in a bonus bet if your first bet loses. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code JJ. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or in West Virginia, call www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. One no-sweat bet per new customer. Issued as one bonus bet based on amount of initial losing bet. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/promos for deposit, wagering, and eligibility restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. All right, a couple ones I really liked. Ivan Shevstov, at Janta Official, just found out about the seams passing thing for shooters so they get a ball more ready to shoot. Is it really a common thing for pro point guards, or it's not that significant? Thank you. P.S. There's a short video about it on YouTube with Rondo and CP3. Interesting thing about Rondo and CP3, and I played with CP3, teams really never pressured him. So he was cognizant of passing on the seams, which if you've ever shot a basketball, passing on the seams means the seams are this way when you catch the ball, as opposed to sideways, crooked, vertical. They're horizontal. So that's how most people shoot a free throw. Dirk is one of the few guys I can think of off the top of my head that was a great shooter that shot his free throws on the seams, or with the seams, going vertical. it's funny because Jason Williams also has a video where he's talking to a young player about passing the ball to shooters, and he says the same thing. I would practice on the seams. I would tell my passer in a workout, I'd say, throw it to me on the seams for the next 10, and then I'd throw me bullshit passes. I'd have him throw it to my ankles. I'd have him throw it high. I'd have it throw sidewinding. I'd have him throw bounce passes. You have to practice everything. There's certainly, I think most of our shots we take, most of our top shots we take, the ball is right there, perfect seams. And so when a point guard's able to do that, it absolutely matters. Most of my side misses where I'd miss right or miss left, because I wasn't shooting on the seams, because the pass wasn't perfect, especially with bounce passes or cross court passes through the defense. There's side spin on it. I was not a guy who would change the seams mid shot. I just would try to get it up.
Would you give that note to point guards?
No.
No. You can't say it. It's I think it's
no, because just pass me the ball.
It's kind of it's like telling a quarterback.
I used to joke with Chris because played with him for 4 years, and he maybe threw me 2 bad passes in 4 years. When I would come off floppy action or a pin down or something, he'd throw me literally 2 bad passes in 4 years, and both times he'd be like, "My bad, dude. I gotta be better. I gotta be better."
Do you think he remembers?
You've thrown me 678 passes. You're good, man. You're allowed to have one bad one.
I was gonna say, do you think he remembers all of his bad passes?
He's a sick guy. Probably. I bet he remembers all of his turnovers in his career. Peter Wheeler at Pete Wheeler Sr. Aliens challenge us to a 7-game series for the fate of our planet. You are Team Earth's GM. Task: 1 player from each decade from the 1950s through the 2020s. 8-man rotation. You get them as they existed in that decade. The alien squad is super balanced, so fit positional need matters.
Great.
I love
Great
this
question.
I love this question. All right, so I knew this question ahead of time, and I gave it about 3 minutes of thought. So I'm going to get killed for this, but I don't care.
I want the 50s and 60s is what I'm most curious about.
I'm going to get killed for this because there's one guy left off that everybody's like, "What? How the fuck did you leave this guy off?" All right. So here's what I'm thinking. I need size. I need rim protection. I need shot creation. I need shot makers. I need shooting. All right. 1950s, I'm going with Bob Cousy.
Wow.
I'll tell you why in a second. 1960s, I'm going with Bill Russell. 1970s, I'm going with Kareem. 1980s, I'm going with Larry Bird. 2000s, I'm going with Kobe. 2010s, I'm going with LeBron. And the 2020s, I'm going with Steph. Now, you may say, you skipped a decade. And I did skip a decade. The 1990s, I need a versatile wing defender who can also make threes and score. I'm going with Scottie Pippen.
Oh, my God. I think we might have to.
Michael Jordan is the GOAT. He's the.
This is you. Know what this is? Know what this is? This is you thinking like the coach about talent, about ego management and talent management.
No, it's not. I'm the GM here. I'm not the coach. I'm not coaching.
You're picking Scotty over MJ to beat the aliens.
Well, I guess when you put it that way.
When you put it, just think.
Look, here's why. Can I tell you why? By the way,
this is going to get broken out. This is going to be JJ says Scottie Pippen's better than
Here's
Michael
why.
Jordan.
No. Here's why. No, I didn't say Scottie. No, Scottie Pippen was not a better NBA player than Michael Jordan. All right. Here's why. I've got, of the top 10 or 11 players ever, in my estimation, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've got 6 of them.
Yep.
Kobe is a lot of people's GOAT. LeBron is a lot of people's GOAT. There's some Steph stands that he's the GOAT, certainly the greatest shooter of all time. So when I was thinking about building out this roster, I was like, all right, I've got shooting with Larry, size with Larry. I've got elite shot making with Kobe, and I've got that Kobe Mamba mentality. I've got just the overall versatility, greatness, passing, scoring, rebounding, all that stuff. 2010's LeBron, peak of LeBron. So if Jordan's your GOAT, LeBron is the second best.
Yeah.
If LeBron is the GOAT, Jordan's the second best. So I got one of the 2 best players of all time. I got one of the 2.
Okay.
All right. Bob Cousy and Bill Russell won a lot of shit together. I'm confident the chemistry is going to be there.
So you're there for the chemistry, because I was going to ask about Wilt over Cousy.
So I looked at, do I need a big that can score? And I said, give me Kareem.
My concern with the aliens, I know you said they're balanced, is they're going to be really tall.
Yeah.
And you're going to need a lot of length. They're not going to be,
Why
there's
do
not
I
going to be a
feel
lot
like,
of 5'10".
why do I feel like this segment is going to get me in trouble?
I just think people are going to be confused. Honestly, it's not going to get you in trouble. They're just going to be, you're breaking all of the things they would expect about you. You're picking Cousy and you're leaving Jordan off.
I want Pippen on my team.
All right, stand by it.
I like this one from Aiden Isaac. This one is for Tommy Alter. You're a Chicago fan, right? How are you dealing with the pain the Bulls have caused us over the years?
I don't understand the Bulls' plan.
Okay.
I don't think anybody does. It seems like they are content losing in the play-in with how they have approached everything for the last year and a half. I don't think there's a lot of hope on the horizon for Bulls fans, to be honest. And like Kobe White's been great. Obviously, Caruso's been great. The vets are still awesome. They still have their moments or whatever it is. But I think that, I know they're not the only team that's in this situation that feel like they're in no man's land. But with every other team, even like in Brooklyn, and the Brooklyn fans are miserable. Like Brooklyn has a ton of picks at the end of the 20s. They have the Dallas picks. They have the Phoenix picks. They don't have their own picks right now. But there is a plan. You just got to wait. Like the plan is not going to come to fruition in the next year and a half. It's going to come to fruition 3 years from now. The Bulls don't have that. So I would say the only hope is that things change fast in the NBA, as we know. And I think that they play hard. And guys like Kobe have been great. That's been a revelation. But I think that in general, it's just not a good time to be a Chicago sports fan in general. Besides the Bears having the first pick, everything else is pretty bleak.
All right, this one is from Nick Weber. Do you expect Miami to repeat their success in the playoffs they have the last few seasons? I feel like no one is talking about them as a legitimate contender, even though they were in a similar spot in the standings last year. Called 2 of their games over the last 3 weeks. I don't want to use the word expect. I don't expect Miami to repeat their success in the playoffs, but it would not surprise me at all. Obviously, the health of Terry Rozier, super important. He was essentially their the trade was before the deadline, but essentially their deadline pickup. What's interesting about Miami, and it's another reason really want to watch Dallas over this next month and a half. Going into the week of All-Star break, there were 3 teams that did not have a 5-man lineup that had played over 100 minutes together. Miami, in that game I called on Sunday, used their 28th different starting lineup. Only the Dallas Mavericks and the Memphis Grizzlies had more. And only the Dallas Mavericks and the Memphis Grizzlies, they're the only other 2 teams that didn't have a 5-man lineup that had played over 100 minutes together.
Yeah.
So it's hard, I think, to say what is this team? There's just hasn't been any sense of continuity with the Miami Heat. When this team is healthy and whole, they are a legitimate contender in the Eastern Conference. 100%.
My follow-up to that, you called their Celtics game the Sunday before All-Star. Good game, went down to the wire. Jimmy didn't play, right? Jimmy was out.
Jimmy did not play.
Yeah, Jimmy didn't play. It still went down to the wire. How do you think this team matches up with Boston specifically? Obviously, this has been a great rivalry for the last couple of years, but it feels like as good as Boston is, and in my mind, at least the clear favorites in the East, it still feels like they match up pretty well with them.
Yeah. Well, there was a question in here about how Porzingis makes Boston different. And I think he versus the Heat specifically, I think it is a little different because you can't really play as much zone versus the Celtics when you have Kristaps Porzingis as the guy at the free throw line. It's just hard. It's similar to Jokic in the finals, where when Porzingis catches the ball at the free throw line, he can shoot over anybody. If it's a smaller defender, he's going to try to rip through to draw the foul or just shoot right over the top. If there's space, he made one in that Sunday game against Zone where he just caught the ball. There wasn't anybody within 3 feet of him, and he just didn't even dip and just knocked it down. I think he changes that matchup a little bit. Bam as a switching defender is so valuable. And then you have Porzingis, if you do switch, then rolling into a matchup against a smaller defender. And again, Kristaps Porzingis, in the 10 years of data we have for efficiency on post-ups, is having the most efficient season posting up in the last 10 years. And the reason is he punishes every single mismatch. So he changes that dynamic for me in terms of the Heat Boston matchup. Where I think the Heat are at their best is when Bam is getting rebounds, breaking out, creating pace, and then he's functioning more as a hub than as a scorer. Because we saw last year against Denver, look, they were very willing to let Bam take 25 mid-range shots and make 12 or 13 of them and have 26 or 27 points. They were very willing to let him do that. To me, when he's functioning as a hub, he's getting Tyler Hero threes. He's getting Duncan Robinson threes. He's getting Jimmy back cuts. He's freeing Caleb Martin. It's that to me is more valuable to the Miami Heat than Bam going and scoring 21 points every night. It's him as the hub.
Unlocking the whole offense.
Yes.
Basically.
100%.
Speaking of the Celtics, and your answer may come from Miami as well. Andy WK wrote in, who are your new Alfreds for this spring and or playoffs? My caveat, he didn't say this, is I'm saying you can't say Derek and you can't say Aaron Gordon.
All right, so potential Alfreds for this year's playoffs. I love it. I could name 15 to 20 of them, but I'm going to go with 5 that I quickly wrote down once I heard this question. I'm going to start with the New York Knicks. OG Anunoby completely changed the dynamic of their team once he was traded there. Battling, coming off that procedure on his elbow. So assuming health, if they're going to advance in the Eastern Conference, and I think they have a real chance if they're completely healthy to be a conference finals team, he's going to every night guard the other team's best perimeter player. He's going to be tasked with making spot up threes. His cutting, in particular, in the Knicks offense, Julius Randle Isles, when they get in their driving kick game, that's important. He's going to have to be a star in that Alfred role for the Knicks to get the conference finals. Max Strus, up and down shooting season, has had a lot of success as a playmaker this year, has held his own in deep into the playoffs. Defensively, when he's been targeted, he's a guy that could be a real difference maker for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Minnesota, I'm going Naz Reid. Love that dude. By the way, the numbers when he's on the court with Gobert, they've got a 94 defensive rating. So he's giving you spacing, playmaking, shooting.
The Minnesota fans love him.
And that pairing defensively.
Behind Ant, he might be their second favorite player.
New Orleans Pelicans, I'm going Herb Jones.
Yep.
Wrecking ball on defense, over 40% from 3. He might, just so you know, he's not approaching Derek White fandom in terms of the Alfred fandom,
He's
but
not far
Herb
off.
Jones he's approaching Derek White. And then here's another one. Grayson Allen for the Phoenix Suns, having his best season shooting the basketball, gives them all sorts of spacing when the big 3 are on the floor. So I'm going to go those 5.
Can I name 2 as questions to you, whether they count as Alfreds?
Sure.
Would you consider Jared Allen and or Jaden McDaniels to be Alfreds?
Jared Allen is an all-star and should have been an all-star this year.
So okay.
No, I don't. Jaden McDaniels, yeah, he's an Alfred.
McDaniels in the Reed. It could have been either one.
It could have been either one.
Yep. I think those are good picks.
Every sicko knows that in order to get the full NBA game experience, you have to hear the game to truly experience the game, which is why I want to tell you about the all-new Move 2 from Sonos. The Move 2 is a powerful and portable smart speaker for listening all around your home and beyond. Connect to Wi-Fi at home or Bluetooth for listening on the go and stream music, podcast, and audiobooks from all your favorite services. We have one in our kitchen and it works amazing. Plus, we've gotten a lot of compliments on the look. It's very sleek. Move 2 tunes itself like magic, so it sounds great whether you're listening inside or outdoors. And if you plan on taking this thing golfing like me, don't worry about the elements. This powerful and durable speaker weathers sun, splashes, sand, and accidental drops and shanks with ease. Enjoy easy control with the Sonos app, Apple AirPlay 2, and your voice. Mix and match with other Sonos speakers to create the ultimate sound system for immersive home theater and multi-room music. Visit Sonos.com to learn more. Build a starting 5 of players you've played with in your career. This is from @BasketballDojo3. I'm going to do this one real quick. I thought about this and I wrote it down. If I leave one of my teammates out that should have been on here, I apologize. Point guard, Chris Paul. And I'm getting all these guys in their prime. Point guard, Chris Paul. Shooting guard, Vince Carter. Small forward, Jimmy Butler. Power forward, Blake. And center, I'm going Joel Embiid.
It's pretty good. Luka, 6-man.
Oh, he was only 2 months.
No, 6 man. He's
No,
a super,
fuck that.
He's a super 6-man.
I love you, Vince. I love you, Vince. CP, Luka, Jimmy, Blake, Joel.
That's pretty
Luka,
good.
I apologize.
That's a pretty good team.
All right. Jevin.33 sent in a couple questions. We appreciate that. JJ, how are you teaching your son's team NBA concepts and actions? Great question. There was another question related to the Franz Wagner interview, talking about youth development within the United States. So, I'm actively working on trying to find a camp for this summer. Likely we'll do Spain this summer for my kids if we can find the right setting and the right team and the right camp, youth camp. Potentially Serbia next summer as well, because I want to learn. I want to learn what they're doing over there that's potentially different, right? So I think in terms of NBA concepts, I think the first thing I'm teaching is spacing. Like I don't think at youth basketball, again, like we can go win games, but how many guys are going to be 6'11" or taller that need to be posting up? It's just, I just don't believe in it. So The first thing I did as a coach was I just taught them 5 out. I taught them how to leave the paint open if you're not cutting or driving. I taught them basic pick and roll concepts. We've worked this season on ghost screens, which is where you slip either out to the 3-point line or you slip towards the rim. What we've been working on lately has been our cutting. So we're working on back cutting when we're getting the ball dribbled at us. We're working on face cutting when we're off the ball. It was beautiful. Yesterday at practice, we ran a set and we had drilled back cutting and face cutting a bunch at the beginning of practice. Back-to-back plays. This one of my kids, James, face cut from the slot on the left wing, got it in the paint, got fouled, and won. Very next play, Knox, that we ran a ghost screen at the top of the key. He turned the corner, started dribbling towards Leo who was in the corner. Leo back cut. Knox hit him on a back cut. Help came. Leo skipped the ball to the left corner. We knocked down the jumper. James knocked down the jumper. Like, that's beautiful basketball. Let's go. Here's the issue that I have that I'm trying to figure out as a coach at this age group. I have a fundamental belief that at this age group against man-to-man, the less dots you have to connect, the more likely you will have success. So rather than trying to pass the ball 22 times on a possession and run 4 or 5 different actions, it's trying to teach them an action then leads to a concept, right? An action leads to a concept. And once the action doesn't get a shot, then you're just going back to your concepts, right? So we might run an away screen. All right. We might run an away screen into a ghost screen. Let's say we get downhill. Now there's 2 on the ball. Now we're working on our drive and kick game. That is a concept. So it's constantly trying to build over and over again. But the cutting piece is the piece that we're working on a ton, because right now I'd spent like basically the last year just trying to get spacing and then just basic like screenaways, backside action like Ginobili used to get for the Spurs, and pick and rolls and dribble handoffs. Do you feel like the action to concept, that process from a learning standpoint is? Are you seeing progress every day with it? I mean, like it's amazing, and like I wonder if we should find video that like we can put online for fans to see. Like it's crazy they're doing this. This is the team when they do it. It feels so good. Yeah. When they do it, it feels so good. Well, it's funny because we'll drill a concept and they'll ask me, what play is this? And I'm like, it's not a play. It's just a concept.
Yeah.
It's what we want, how we want to play. So they were so hell-bent and Knox plays some on the ball, Liam plays some on the ball. They were so hell-bent on like every single time they would look at me and be like, what's the play? What's the play? And I would always say, just go play. That then they wouldn't really know what to do because we weren't calling a play. So my plays are just concepts. Like they're literally just an action that gets us into movement and spacing and drive and kick, right? So I finally started drilling, which all NBA teams do. It's funny, is like 5-man groups. You rotate in and out. You get the ball off the glass. The ball handler pushes up. You get to a spot. And then you have a series of actions you can run. You can go do an away screen. You can come run a pick and roll. You can run a ghost screen. You can dribble at somebody. They can back cut. You can do a face cut. Like, so getting them to understand like the play is actually just an action, right? The play is just an action. You can do that at any point in time. So if I say, go play, just play, the guy who took the ball out, who's the top of the key, the 5-man, right? He can just run right into a pick and roll, or he can go set an away screen, or he can back cut and clear the paint. It doesn't matter.
What age do you think you figured this out yourself, the conceptual part?
It wasn't until I played like 8th grade JV and 9th grade fresh. It took a while. And I told the kids that. I said, look, we're not going to master this at 9, 10 years old.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we get this by the time we're 12 or 13. I think we'll be a little bit ahead of the curve where, I mean, if you could imagine at that age group, instead of just ISO versus a zone or ISO versus a box and elbow type defense, you're flowing from one action to the next and everybody's sort of involved. That takes time.
Yeah.
And I hope we get there.
Yeah. All right. Quick one from Tom Pogue. JJ, if you could add one skill move to your bag during your career, what would it have been?
I shot a few of them. It never was a part of like anything that I did on a regular basis. The step back 3. To me, the off the dribble step back 3 is what I say this all the time, Tommy. It's to me what has unlocked the modern NBA offense, where you have your best scorers and players, instead of getting to like a fall away from 18 feet from mid range that probably gets made at a 37, 36% clip from 2. The best players are shooting step back 3s off the dribble, and they're making them at roughly mid 30%. It's worth more points.
Yeah.
And the threat of it also, like, think about the threat of Luka's step back is what helps unlock his drive in a split stance. It is.
Because you have to respect it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
James Harden. It is.
Did you feel like you just, like, what do you think your sort of reasoning for not developing it was just the setup you were in, where it just wasn't a great opportunity for you to really kind of like push that?
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I was never going to be an isolation player or a primary ball handler. I did work on my step back all the time. It was part of my regular routine to shoot step back 3s. And that's why I say I would shoot them sometimes, particularly going right, because again, the defense is on my left side, so I feel like I could get it off better. But I worked on it going left. But I was never going to be a guy. I just wasn't. I knew this. I knew this as a player. Like, I wasn't going to be a guy that was going to have the ball in his hands all the time. So I would work on 1 or 2 dribble step back 3s, not like where you're in your bag going back and forth.
No, but what I mean is like, so say like, you know, in some of these situations in LA, Philly, whatever it is, it's like you're coming in, you're not starting, you're coming in as the 8th man or the 9th man, and your minutes are down. You know, you're playing whatever 10, 15 minutes a game, but you're there to be the microwave. You know what I mean? You're not there to be a guy that we're running play after play for. It's more like, JJ, go get us like 9 and then go sit. Do you think if you had been in that spot, you might have been more willing to like miss a couple of those because you weren't having the first play of the game run for you. You weren't
right. Yeah, I mean, maybe.
It would have been. The funny thing about the step back 3 is it's like when Luka's side, obviously, like even when you know, just sort of like regular guys start cooking with it, the crowd goes crazy.
Yeah,
the crowd goes crazy. It's like it's
interesting though, because I think too, it's like to your question, I was thinking about like early in my career when I came off the bench in Orlando and was like a spot starter essentially.
Yeah.
By like my 3rd year, I was like a spot starter. You know, Courtney was hurt, or Vince Carter was hurt, or Jay Rich was hurt. I got to start, right? During that stretch, though, like we didn't have a ton of movement. So a lot of what I got out of like spot up, you know, besides like spot up 3s and stuff, was like just a 2-man action with Dwight or Ryan Anderson or Rashard Lewis on the left wing. sometimes it's pick and roll, sometimes it's dribble handoff. When I then became a starter for however many years, 6 years or whatever it was, I then went to New Orleans and I was back to being a spot starter or coming off the bench. And that was honestly probably the closest approximation of what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that year I played, I think, 28 minutes a game, and averaged over 15, shot 45% from three. And also, that was the first year where like I was like, I would go to not the first year I would work on my game, but the first year where I took all the young guys before shoot around every game day, and we literally worked on stupid off the dribble moves. And so like, and part of it was like I was playing for Alvin, and I just had the freedom to do it. You know what I mean?
Who were the?
It was like Nikhil, Frank Jackson would come for sure. I think Najee came a couple times, but like, yeah, it was like Jamel McMillan, Nate's son. Like we would go, an hour before the bus, and we'd go get the gym time, and we would just like work on off the dribble bullshit.
If you were coaching, like, if you're not coaching Luka, you're not coaching James Harden, you're not coaching a, all NBA type player.
Yeah.
What's your patience for the step back three if you're not hitting it? Like if you have a dude coming in, just like, is that a thing? I mean, it's the interesting thing about that shot is it doesn't feel like it's a high percentage shot.
This is a good way to end the episode, because it goes back to the very first question about what makes a great coach. And it's a great question, Tommy. This is from my perspective as a player. I think about if I were to coach, there's a really hard balance to find between putting a player in a role or a box. I would never put a player in a box, but putting a player in a role that he can excel at in that moment or in that season or on that team with that group, but allowing some wiggle room for development. Now, if you're coaching the Detroit Pistons, right, your patience level for development is much higher than if you're Doc Rivers on the Bucks for Andre Jackson.
Stakes are different.
The stakes are different, right? So I think it's team by team, but regardless, you still have to find that balance. Because I felt at times, and I'm not saying this about me, I'm saying at times I had coaches that put players in a box. I felt at times certain coaches maybe put me in a box. And that's discouraging because it does limit in some ways your development. Now, a 6'4" guard with a negative wingspan, limited athleticism relative to other NBA players. So my ceiling was not going to be that high regardless, right? If I got put in a box or not. So it didn't, I think with certain players too, you have to approach that differently.
Yeah.
If I'm Jonathan Kuminga, if I'm looking at Jonathan Kuminga, I'm like, okay, that guy's got a really high ceiling. There has to be some level of wiggle room for allowing him to make mistakes on the court.
It's the interesting thing about the NBA, and sometimes it's nobody's fault. Like you look at like Trey Mann in Charlotte, and obviously it's a small sample size, but you're like, he's been cooking down there, and it's not that OKC did anything wrong. Like they didn't have the minutes for him.
Yeah.
So he goes down there and he gets to show this off, and so it feels like, not to put words in your mouth, but it's like part of the coach's job is to just like keep the head up. So it's like if you're OKC and you're talking to Trey Mann, it's not that you're doing anything wrong. It's that we can't get you those shots. But when you see him in a different setup and you see him playing like he is now, it's just because the role's different.
Yeah. And I think it's also that scenario. Another example for me is like the guy I was traded for in Milwaukee was Tobias Harris, who wasn't playing at all in Milwaukee. He goes to Orlando and immediately just takes off. So it's also dependent on the player.
Yeah.
To be a gym rat like Tobias.
To deliver, to be ready when you get that shot.
And then if you're a coach, like, and a number of teams now have really prioritized this, the player development staff. And when I first came in the league, there were 2 player development coaches. Now some teams have like a player development coach for every player. Some teams have 6 to 8. Like the staffs have grown, and the player development coach is a big part of that. And like if you're a coach, you're talking to that player development coach about each player that he's in charge of. Like, what's he doing? What's he working on?
Yeah.
Where's he improving? Where is he not improving? And it's not just like on court work. It's like, I remember I had a coach this year in one of my meetings. I'm not going to name him because I want to keep that whatever. But we were talking about a specific player, and he said, we have pick and roll film room where we will literally go watch film on other players and what they're doing in different scenarios in pick and roll. And then we'll go out on the court and have the player development coaches emulate those on-court situations, and we'll just drill it over and over again. So he's used to making those reads in real time. Really fascinating stuff.
Really.
All right. This has been another episode of The Old Man on Three with JJ Redick and Tommy Alter. Appreciate you guys.